from CBS, TNT, and Westwood One of the most recognizable names in our industry. Unmute him, and I welcome you, Kevin Harlan. Thank you for being here.
Hi, John. Great to be on with you. Thanks for having me a part of this wonderful convention of broadcasters all over the country, and honored to be in your rotation today. Thank you so much.
No, it's fabulous to have you. I'm grateful, and thank you for your support of what we do at STAA. My first question that I'm asking all of our guests is for a 30-second thumbnail of how you got from the University of Kansas. You know I'm a Wildcat, so it still pains me to say that, Kevin. From the University of Kansas to where you are now.
Well, spent 4 years in Kansas working under a legendary broadcaster, Tom Hedrick. He was a mentor to me. He had broadcast Super Bowl I and IV for CBS Radio. Was at that time the voice of the Jayhawks, took me under his wings in a variety of areas, and I got to fill in for him on his radio sportscasts, build up a great deal of experience that I was building on from my days in high school in Green Bay when I worked for a radio station when I was 14, and began broadcasting in my room with the sound turned down when I was about 11, 12 years old. Luckily, my first job out of college was in the NBA. Broadcaster left. The job was open. They had heard some of my work. I was lucky enough to get that job the day I graduated from Kansas in May of 82. I was 21, and worked my way from that point to doing the Kansas City Chiefs on radio for 9 years. Minnesota Timberwolves, began at ESPN in 91, doing a college football, worked there to Fox when they got the NFL rights, and then to CBS, 22 years at CBS, and 22 years at Turner Broadcasting. 10 years doing Monday Night Football for Westwood One. And there's not a night that goes by that I don't lay my head on my pillow and thank the good Lord above that I've been given all these wonderful opportunities. A blessed career, very lucky career, fortunate career, which brings me to today to talk with you fine folks and be with you, John.
Kevin, based on your resume, I'm guessing you should be about 138 years old.
Sometimes I feel like I'm 138 years old. But my dad gave me a great piece of advice when I was young, and he was in the NFL for 37 years with the Green Bay Packers, and before that with the St. Louis Baseball Cardinals. He said, I never woke up any day of my life, my working life, that I did not look forward to going to the stadium, to the ballpark, to the office. I loved what I did. He has since retired, but that stuck with me, that he woke up every day and looked forward to his day. And I feel the same. That was a great bit of wisdom that he gave me as a young boy.
Very cool. Let's go to the questions. Giovanni Heater, thank you for hanging in. Please state your affiliation, whether that's a school or an employer, just the city where you are, and your question for Kevin.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am a junior at Cicero North Syracuse High School, just outside of Syracuse, New York. And so my question here is, what is the best way for such a young group, and I know there's a lot of young kids on here as well, to get ourselves out there and really make a name for ourselves? And what would be your best piece of advice towards that?
First thing I'd work on as a young broadcaster is voice and delivery. Because when you send that link, YouTube or whatever format you send to that prospective employer, the first thing that's going to stand out, not how you look, not how much information you have, although those are important things, in particular the information, but it's how you sound. It's your delivery. It's your cadence. It's your voice. So the first thing I'd work on, and I told my daughter this, who began at a very young age, work on delivery, work on voice. Find voices, deliveries, broadcasters that you like, the way they sound, and use them as a roadmap to develop your own delivery and your own voice. When I was 10, 11 years old, the first voice that I remember was John Facenda, then Keith Jackson, then Don Criqui, Ray Scott, Jim Simpson. These are the voices I grew up with. I still hear them in my head. I still to this day use them as a roadmap, as a compass. The first thing any prospective employer will listen to is your voice. And in the first 30 seconds of listening, they'll be able to figure out yay, thumbs up, or not really there yet. So that's what I would work on.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Zach,
Giovanni. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Zach Serdenik, you are next. Please state your affiliation and your question.
Hi, I'm Zach Studenik. I'm going to be a student at Michigan State University in the fall.
Congratulations.
Kevin, thank you. I listened to your session on Ernie Johnson's journalism school last week, and I have listened to a lot of those, and Brian Anderson said something on one of those, and I kind of wanted to ask your thoughts on it. He talked about his 3 S's with stats, stories, and silence, and balancing those. So I kind of was wondering your thoughts on that, balancing during a game as a play-by-play announcer.
Good question, Zach. I'm not big on stats. I think if they can mean something and set up my analyst on television, I will use them. But stats, I think, have got to be very prudently used on TV because the graphics are constantly up there. You can see that. The terrific people on our trucks put that up. On radio, it is different because you are the constant reporter. You are the eyes and the ears of those listening. And so stats can make more of an impact because you're not seeing them, but they're a part of the story in being a good reporter. The who, what, why, where, and how. So stats on radio are used differently than they are on TV. What was the middle S again, Zach? I'm sorry.
Stories.
Stories. Big on stories, especially on television. Silence on television. All terrific things to use. Radio is a completely different animal. Silence is good, but when you have silence, you leave your listener, what's going on? What happened? What are they seeing? And on TV, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, you don't need to say anything. So I agree that silence is good and can tell the picture and give the story the feeling it needs as it's unfolding. A big shot. I did one in Toronto last year in Game 7, Raptors and Sixers, and the silence was perfect after Kawhi hit the fadeaway corner, series-deciding walk-off three-point game-winning shot. But on radio, you've got to be a constant reporter. And dead air is good. It can accent. It can add to it the drama. It's like an orchestra. In both mediums, it's like an orchestra. And a good conductor always uses that orchestra, and they fill in and they make that production whole. But I think that it's got to be prudently used on radio and significantly used on television. And stories on TV help a lot more than stories on radio. In radio, you're churning up the reporting, who, what, where, when, how, and why, and you're constantly reporting. So there's not as much time for stories. Have your storylines, but don't be inundated with story after story because you're not feeding what needs to be fed from what you're seeing with your eyes, through your mind, and off through your mouth into the microphone.
Thank you, Zach. Let's go to Matthias Waldman. You are next up. Please state your affiliation and your question for Kevin.
My name is Matthias Waldman. I just recently graduated from Ithaca College back in December.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So right now I'm still searching for that first job. I've had a lot more experience doing radio than I have doing TV. I know Beth Mowens in the last session talked about, how much you stare at the TV and what they're showing for the graphics and such, and how much you look at the field itself. So can you kind of explain what you like to do and kind of how you got to the point you are with, experience with both? Because like you said, it's a completely different animal.
That's a great question. Obviously, what is on the screen matters the most. And so you can't talk about something they don't see. So I'm glued to that TV monitor in our broadcast booth for CBS about 90 to 95% of the time. Plus, it acts as binoculars because the HD screen in front of us can help me see if there's a fumble, who's made the tackle. I don't use a spotter. I feel that I've got to know as much as anybody watching, as much as the coaches. I've got to know the personnel. I've never used a spotter. I don't use a spotter for radio. I don't use a spotter for TV. I'm more comfortable that way. If I don't know who, no one should know more than myself. So that's why I'm glued to that thing. Now, when there is a long pass, I will glance up to look over the edge of the monitor to look downfield. I've got to make sure that I know what's at the end of that arching pass, that rainbow pass. And sometimes on the screen, it's not showing that. It's showing the flight of the ball. So I need to know what's going on a Hail Mary pass, long pass, whatever it may be, and I got to be prepared for what's at the other end. But that's really the only time. And when I'm doing TV, I don't want to read graphics and notes they've got on television. I just want to accent what they say. So let's say it's a third down graphic and it shows they're 1 of 10 on third down, 5 yards or longer. I'll look at Rich Gannon or Kurt Warner or Boomer Esiason, whoever I'm working with, and I'll nudge them when on television, and I'll say, boy, they're having a hard time on third down today. We can all read it says 1 of 11, but let's accent that and bring in my analyst to talk about that and give it some meat, give it some teeth and what it means. And so I like to use graphics and things we put on there as a way to drum up a running conversation with my analyst. And I think the play-by-play announcer's always got to remember on television, you're really fourth in importance. The picture's number 1. The analyst is number 2. The graphics, the replays, and all the great bells and whistles of TV are number 3. And then the play-by-play guy. Go back on YouTube, watch Summerall, listen to how he masterfully gets Madden in, accents a graphic. It's unique the way the skill has developed and what you've got to do. Michaels, when you watch him on Sunday night, he may read the first couple words, paraphrase, and then get Collinsworth into it. So I'm big on accenting the graphics. They can see it, don't say it. I constantly, when I go over my games, they can see it, don't say it, idiot, speaking to me, not to you or anybody else, but to me. I'm trying to make an explanation point. If they can see it, you don't have to say it. Accent the picture on TV. Radio, completely different. Radio, again, like I said before to the young man, I think it was Zach, just about you've got to give some pertinent stats. Not every stat, but pertinent stats which make up this nice, wonderful, empty canvas in the listener's mind about what's going on, why it's going on, and what importance it has in the basic storyline of the game.
Next question, Logan, without a last name, but Logan, hang on a second. Hopefully well, Logan, if you're there, I'm having trouble unmuting you for whatever weird reason, but go ahead with your question.
Unmuted?
There you go, we're good.
Hi, Kevin. Logan Anderson. I'm a freelance broadcaster in Minnesota. And what I wanted to ask was, at your level, doing the preparation, there's lots and lots of information. Sometimes all we get is 15 minutes with a coach.
Yep.
What are your best methods of getting good information out of those coaches in that brief time?
Oh, good. Logan, great. And I like that chair. That looks awful comfortable. I used to take naps in that chair, too, but I would. Hey, great question, Logan, and good to be on with someone from Minnesota. My work week begins with getting my boards ready. I call it doing my skeletons, which is name, number, and school and years in the league. I'm not big on weight and height. It just doesn't, unless a guy is 375 pounds or a left tackle is 6'8". That really is the only time that I really get into those kinds of things. I'm not big on height and weight. And from there, I'll go to making sure that I've got those things down. My wife just came in. She is the reason why I am here. She or he will on my boards look just very plain skeletons, number, name, and basically just the basics on that player. Then in the release, I'll go to the statistical page and fill in the pertinent stats that I think are needed. Then I'll go through the release, then the stories that week by all the great beat writers out there that cover these teams, because they're watching every bounce of the ball, every throw of the pass, every practice, every press conference, every game. They know far more than I'll ever know. But if I can get up to speed the week of the game, it's huge. So I want to find out what's important to them, because I think that's going to be important to me and thus to the people watching and listening. If I were doing high school and didn't have all those different resources to me, I'd have each coach talk about the other. More times than not, coaches will be more expansive about what they've seen in tape and in their scouting reports on the opposing team. Kind of use the crossways information. Have Coach A talk about Coach B's team. Have Coach B talk about Coach A's team. Now, if you've got the relationship with that coach, they may give you some just coach your important things tonight. I don't want to hear, well, we've got to run the ball, we've got to stop the run. Everybody, we can't turn the ball over. They all say the same thing, right? So they'll be more expansive if they're talking about the other team more so than if they're talking about their own team. They always want to play a little close to the vest. And then, Logan, if you ever get a chance to talk with the visiting teams, the home teams, radio announcers, or if you can talk with reporters from the cover the high school beat for that newspaper in that area, they can always add a nugget. But on radio, remember this. The story is always happening in front of you live. It's always unfolding right there. You don't need to be going into a lot of backstories, except for a couple of your big headlines, right? Your big storylines going in. Every broadcast has to have those. But your job is to call that game accurately as it's unfolding. You've got the benefit. All the guys in the press box are writing for tomorrow's edition, for the blog later that night, for the report later that day. You're doing as it unfolds live, so you want to be the consummate reporter. Have your information going in. Don't get bogged down in some of the old storylines. Come up with the fresh storylines. Have each coach talk about the other, and see if that gets you to where you want to go. But know the players. You cannot be guessing on plays. The first thing I want to do is I want to know who's playing, what formations they look to be in, and how they're doing it. I know that some broadcasters have their spotting boards in terms of position. I have taken the Pat Summerall. When I was at Fox and as a young broadcaster, Summerall was our lead guy with Madden. And so Pat lent me his spotting boards back when I was in my early 30s. And I have used the same basic format, and I do it numerically. We've got tight ends playing in the backfield. We've got tight ends playing in the slot. We've got tight ends that are wide receivers. We have tight ends playing an extra tackle. Tight ends, if I've got the tight end in the tight end position and the running back who's now split wide in a running back position, I'm looking all over my boards and go, where's this? Where do you go? Where do you go? Tackle eligibles. I do it numerically because I spot for myself and don't use a spotter. I can go right down that line and I look for the number. Now, more times than not, I don't glance at my boards more than 10 times a game because I've been studying all week and I know names and numbers. I'm my own spotter, so I'm out there picking out my own guys. But there are so many different ways to do it. For me, I do my boards numerically, and I try to keep it as simple as I possibly can.
Logan, thank you. Let's go next to Brandon Ross. Brandon, I appreciate you being here. Please state your affiliation and your question. Brandon Ross, are you there? I know you're on.
Oh, sorry, you froze and I didn't hear you say.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead.
No worries, all good. Hi, Kevin. Thank you so much for doing this. My name is Brandon.
Sure, Brandon.
I'm a junior at Syracuse University, set to graduate in December. And so
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're looking at an outlook for sports. It's going to be a while before it's back to normal, but there's almost some sense of a guarantee that there will be a time where there are extensive games without fans. And I know doing play-by-play, one of the big goals is make sure your voice and your energy matches the crowd. How do you handle it when there is no crowd?
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? Because I think, Brandon, that's the direction we're going to go. My guess is, and I have no information on any of this, so this is just personal opinion, I think they're going to pump in crowd noise to a degree as a background on television broadcasts. And then I think we're going to have some very creative audio people, Brandon. We're going to be micing players. We're going to be getting a lot of inside cadence. We're just going to be getting, I think, a real nice listen to the communication. that goes on the field. But I think you're going to have some ambiance. It's only going to make it necessary for the viewer. Now, listen, we know that in practices, we know that in pickup games, these players are used to playing without any fans. In fact, most of the time, they're performing just in front of their own peers. I don't think they're going to blink. I think they're going to fall right into it. They're going to be, I think, looking forward to the joust. I don't know if they're going to be affected by the crowd. Of course, there are moments when you build on their energy. I get all that. But these guys practice 4 times a week by themselves on practice fields with no crowds and only the noise of cadence and communication and coach. But I think for the fan, for the viewing experience like we do in 2K, I think they're going to have to put in some crowd noise to some degree. And then how as broadcasters are we going to go through that? I got to tell you, and here's just a quick example. As a broadcaster, you lose yourself in the game. You are so engaged. You are so focused. You are so deep in the weeds on these games. I rarely hear the crowd. When I'm doing NBA games and I watch back a couple days later, I can't believe how much noise and just nonsense is going on with the dancers, with the giveaways, with the fireworks, with the noise. It's just constantly going. I'm shocked because when I'm doing a game, I never pay attention to it. I have got to be completely engrossed, engaged, and focused on what I'm doing. I'm losing myself in the game. I rarely listen to the crowd. And the only time that it really triggers with me is when there's been a big play on television and I then lay out after the call and then let that play. That's the only time really, Brandon, that I really get engaged with the noise around me. But I know for the viewing experience, it's going to have to be a little bit different. So there'll be some artificial noise pumped in, I'm sure.
Next question, Nick Pearce. Nick, I appreciate you being here, man. Affiliation and question for Kevin.
Hi, John. Thanks a lot for doing this. Kevin, appreciate it as well. I live in Lynchburg, Virginia. I have been the play-by-play voice for Liberty Flames baseball for about 14 years now, I guess, going back to my graduation. Also do Danville Braves minor league baseball in the summers. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again here this year. And then I'm also the PA announcer for the Carolina Panthers. I've been doing that for about
good for you. Wow, what a nice resume you've got. Great career. Congratulations.
I certainly stay busy. I keep the roads hot. But no, I appreciate you doing this. Like I said, I just first of all, I don't think that I've heard anyone call football better on the radio than you do. I get lost in your description and just blown away how accurate you are on everything. But my question is kind of more about the industry itself and not so much about game day prep. I was sitting here kind of thinking of how to ask this, but just what are ways that you keep up with the industry itself, whether it's through colleagues, and certainly John does a great job of it with his website, with job openings and things to that nature, but just the next wave of what's coming for play-by-play announcers, networks. I mean, what are some good resources you have for that?
Well, I guess I read like everybody else does. I look at Awful Announcing when they've got their stories. I definitely pay attention to John's webpage because he constantly is bringing up things to provoke thought, ideas, ways to get it done, maybe ways not to get it done, hints and ideas. And that's why this is an invaluable website and business that John has developed, and I compliment him completely. I'll read Trina, I'll read Deitch in The Athletic, but I only skim. I don't get too deep into those things, Nick, because I just kind of feel like if I'm taking my eye off the ball, which is my preparation for that game, I'm not doing what I have to do to be at my best. I like the knowledge of kind of having a very broad brush stroke look at the business. And people talk. I mean, this is a very gossipy business. People are constantly texting and calling, and I get that. And it's a fascinating business. I can't imagine myself in any other business. But the proliferation of social media and everything else, and the publications, David Halberstam has a terrific publication where David goes back into history. He deals with the current. I'd suggest all young broadcasters get that, subscribe to what David puts out there. It's really well done. Follow John, certainly what he's doing. And then just all the websites, we know what they are. So I look at all those kinds of things. But like anything else, this is also, I think, a very paranoid business. It is a very unsettled feeling business. You're constantly, I think, trying to keep the blinders on and not look over here and not look over there, but keep your eyes straight ahead. So I know I speak for everyone because the people I've talked at the highest level said, we'll always want to talk about the business. Hey, did you hear about this guy? Why is he doing that? How did this happen? Why did this happen? And that's great. And it's all kind of part of the relaxed mind portion of doing it. But you're doing yourself and your career a disservice if you're not worrying about what's right in front of you and what you've got ahead of you. Because if you're looking over here and you're looking over there and you're looking in back of you, you're not looking forward in what you've got to do and the roadmap in front of you. You can easily get swayed. You can easily get seduced into why this guy's getting a job or that woman's getting a job and why am I not getting it? Why is he getting it? Why is she getting it? That's a fool's errand. That's going to just waste valuable time in improving your own product and investing in you. I have a knowledge of, but I don't get too deep. I did just on task again and do what I'm supposed to do.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Everybody,
Kevin.
remember, keep your mics.
Thank you.
Please. Brandon Biscabing, you are next up with your personal affiliation and your question for Kevin, please.
Yeah, hi, Kevin. Thanks for doing this. Thanks, John, for doing this for all of us. I went to Seton Hall, and I've been out of school for a few years now. I currently call games for North Myrtle Beach High School down here. And my question is, I've basically had to create my own opportunities since I've gotten out of school. Haven't really gotten my foot in the door, especially as time continues to progress and I get further and further away. What's the best way of kind of getting your foot in the door and breaking yourself into the real business? And then on top of that, obviously everyone talks about, in this business, especially, the key to success is the people who you know more than what you know. How do you make those connections and in a way that they'll actually say yes?
Good question, Brandon. Thanks for dialing in today. I would say that first and foremost, worry about your product, worry about what you're doing as a broadcaster, making sure that you're doing your part of it. And hopefully, if things are on an even playing field, they will take care of themselves and you won't have the issues of trying to be politically right by getting your foot in it. Have we lost people here, John? I've lost.
No, you're still good. We've got people that are not keeping their mics muted, and the ambient sound from the rooms you're in, you're typing, people coming into the room, you talking to people, is ruining or compromising our audio. So please don't do that. Keep your mics muted. Go ahead, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, John. Thanks. So I think that you certainly want to connect with people. You certainly want to be on top of where openings may be. But if you don't have the quality, if you don't have the talent, it doesn't matter if you've got all the connections in the world. It's not going to make a difference. So when those opportunities are that you've taken care of your business, you've been the best you can be that particular night, stopping over to say hi to a broadcaster, seeing if you can send some tapes out and getting others to comment on what you need to improve on, connecting that way, kind of making it organic in terms of the situation and where you might be broadcasting and who you may come across and what favor you can ask. I'm all for those things. But at the same time, it's not a business I don't think of. Certainly, people can say, well, I knew this person, I knew that person, that's how I got the job. If you're not, the bottom line is this, if you're not qualified and you're not good enough, you can have all the connections in the world and it's not going to help. And there may be doors that are open, but it's up then to you to make sure that once you've opened that door and walked over that threshold and into that room, that you supply what they're looking for and what you need to do as a broadcaster. So you're only limited by the size of your imagination and who you can contact. So you can contact anybody you want, have them listen or look at your tape and go from there. That's great. But at the end of the day, like I said, you can have all the connections in the world. They're going to always hire the best performance, the best delivery, the best broadcaster.
Let's go to Los Angeles. Sean Daylock. Thanks for being here, Rashawn.
Hey, John, thanks a lot. Mr. Harlan, appreciate it. Thanks for being on here with us.
Yes, sir.
Question for you. The beginning of games, you do an excellent job of, it's kind of a dance you do, especially when you're working with Reggie Miller on TNT, that I've noticed in terms of setting him up, getting him involved early in terms of things to look for, things to expect, while also telling us who the characters are. Can you please kind of explain that process and that how you're able to set that up at the beginning of games?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. Thank you for dialing in and being a part of this. It's like a book, and every book has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in the beginning of the book, you have the big headline on top that says, "A win tonight, they're in the playoffs." And then you begin to set the characters. It's like a play. There are characters in a play. And as you go along, play by play, basket by basket, down by down, series by series, different characters begin to emerge. And if every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, you got to fit those characters into the narrative. Going back to the top, how does this character fill in our headline about a win and they clinch a playoff berth? In the middle of a game, once you've gotten to the middle of a book, you kind of exhale a little bit. You kind of, let's widen the lens. Let's figure out where we are. What has happened? What did we think might happen? That's all for the analyst. And at the end of the game, you're summarizing. We thought we would start here, a win and they would get in. They got the big performance from Michael Jordan with 39 points. And sure enough, that got them a win over the Celtics by 3. So it's a beginning, a middle, and an end with every story. And every story has characters. You don't want to push the narrative too much. You don't want to force information on people. You want to let the game come to you. And some people that you've got prep on, you've got notes on, you've got great nuggets on, may not be a part of that at all. But the preparation you've done, those nuggets are already ready and raring to go on your sheets. And you've got them. But sometimes they don't really play a part in that story. And so they really don't become a part of the narrative, thus a part of the beginning, the middle, and the end of what you're trying to do. At the beginning of every story, there are the main characters. So when I go to Reggie Miller or go to Kurt Warner or go to Rich Gannon, when we start a game, we know who the big guys are. We know who the players are, the big headline makers. So you've got your headline, a win and they make the playoffs, and then you've got your sub-headline, which is this quarterback has got to play well, this defensive back has got to defend well, or this defense or this offense. You've got your subheads, and you kind of work like an hourglass, right? An hourglass is shaped like this. It comes right here, and it flares back out again. So in an hourglass, you've got your headline, a win and they get in the playoffs. And then as you kind of go along that first quarter, along that first half, you begin to narrow in. You begin to talk about your characters. You begin to talk about the specifics with the attention to detail about who may play a role, who is playing a role, who has not played a role. And then you flare back out again as you get to the middle of that story, widening the lens. Here's what we've seen in the first half. Then you reset the characters as you start the second half. You reset the storylines, and then you flare again, where at the end of that hourglass, when all those grains of sand have come through, at the end of the hourglass, you got a win and they would get in the playoffs, and they didn't win because the quarterback, who we talked about as one of our main characters, didn't perform like he had to. So think of every game as a story. And in every story, there are characters. And every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Good question. Next up, TJ Wingert. Thanks for being here, TJ. Please state your affiliation and your question.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for having this. Thank you, Kevin, for your time. As of May 16th, I will be a graduate from Longwood University, where I have been doing play-by-play for 4 years, 8 different sports on ESPN+, also a fair amount of radio work as well. I have a job for the summer doing Coastal Plain League baseball with the Tri-City Chili Peppers. I'm looking for something after that. What do I do from August on? I was hoping to get some advice on where I should look, or any places you can kind of point me to, tips, trying to help me out in that process.
Yeah, I think as you're going along this season, part of your day is probably got to be dedicated to sending out your links via email to the people that are in that team, for instance. So are you single A, did you say? I'm sorry, TJ? Are you doing single A?
College Summer League.
College Summer League, thank you. So you do that, and now you start saying and by the way, there are crumbs along the way. One guy leaves a AAA team and goes to the majors, and the AAA job is filled with the AA job, and the AA guy is filled with the single A. So you got to kind of be out there doing your own due diligence. Not time for an agent, although with agent, I can talk about that after this, but I guess I would dedicate part of your workday to, again, letting your imagination run wild. Send something to every single A team GM that you can possibly locate on the internet. Send them a link. You never know when a job is going to open up. Follow the guys that get job and where they were and who filled that job, and then who filled that job. Follow the crumbs to where those jobs are. Again, with a little due diligence every day, you can find where these jobs are. But you've got to be like a blast. You've got to send out your link and your work to as many of these single A guys as you can, or NAIA schools or Division II schools. It's going to be up to you to do that work. You're probably not at the stage yet for an agent. Not to say that you're not on that road. I can hear your voice, and you've got a great young voice at your stage. So you are well on your way. But what I would suggest is let's get into one more level or two before you start to get some help. And that gets me into agentry. And I would say this, I'm all for agents, but believe me, the agent is not in the business to help you. The agent is in the business to put food on his family's table. The agent is in the business to help the agent. And if he can help you along the way and build a nice cadre of people in his portfolio, terrific. But it's a business, right? So if you get the agent, say, great. If you get me something, terrific. You're not taking anything I've got right now. You're not getting one penny of what I've worked to get right now. But if you get me a job on ESPN3 or ESPN2, or the Big Ten Network or the Pac-12 Network or wherever it is, if you get me that college job at that Division II school at Southwest Missouri State, by God, we are in. We're linked and we're ready to go. You're not getting one penny of what I'm getting right now. And I've negotiated with my current employer. You're not going to come in and better the deal. That's not fair to the employer. It's not fair to where I'm sitting right now. Anything beyond that, I'm all for. And I would say the time to start looking for an agent would be probably one more level up where you are now, TJ. But you are on your way, I can tell.
Kevin, thank you so much. That 40 minutes, well, I guess it's 40 minutes, flew past. I appreciate your insight, your participation. Thank you for your support of what we do at STAA and your friendship. I'm grateful for all of it.
Same here, John. Thank you. Great questions. You got a great group on here. I'm honored to be a part of this wonderful crew that you've established for this convention today. Thanks so much for having me on.